Hey friends, your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here with an episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy DM Prep. In this show, we're going to talk about Wild Beyond the Witchlight. We're actually going to do two things in this show. We're going to do a review, kind of a look back on Chapter 1. I have now run Chapter 1 of Wild Beyond the Witchlight, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about running Chapter 1, what that was like, and offer some tips and tricks and some experiences that I've had running Chapter 1. And we're going to get ready for me to run Chapter 2. We're going to talk a bit about Chapter 2 and what it looks like we're going to do in Chapter 2. This show, like all of the work of Sly Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. If you want to help support shows like this, you can support me directly by going to patreon.com/slyflourish. The link is down in the show notes below, and becoming a patron. Patrons get access to all kinds of exclusive material, guides, adventures, and other things. I've got something pretty exciting that is going to be available to patrons probably within a week or so. I'll talk about that more on Sunday, but pretty cool. It's going to be pretty cool. Some people have already seen it. If you're on the Patreon Discord channel, which you get access to by being a patron, you may have already seen it. I put a draft up there. And some neat stuff. So if you like what you're seeing, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I'm going to put a link into the thing here. I have some notes that I put together. This is actually in my Notion notebook of things that I wanted to talk about in the show today. So we're going to talk now about Chapter 1. So I wanted to start off with my biggest tips, the things that I can offer you. If you're thinking about running Wild Beyond the Witchlight, what are some of the top tips that I can offer you? And these are tips that I have talked about with others who have run this adventure. So these aren't just mine alone, but I think they can really help. And my number one tip is to really run a solid session 0 for running Wild Beyond the Witchlight. This is a different kind of adventure, and it's a very different theme. And because it has a lot of interesting features to it, right? A lot of things, like one thing is like you can talk your way out of, or not talk your way, but you can theoretically get through the entire campaign without fighting anything, right? And that's the kind of thing that you would want to talk about in a session 0. You really want to make sure that the characters are invested in the theme and the focus of the adventure, because if they're not, they could kind of go in all different directions. You know, you want to make sure, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about the pacing of Chapter 1. You want to make sure that the characters' drives and motivations are set to ensure that the oscillating pace of being excited to explore the carnival and Prismere is mixed with the interest in getting back like your lost, the lost thing. So number one, and we did a whole other video on Chapter 1 of doing a session 0 for doing a session 0 for Wild Beyond the Witchlight previously. So take a look at that video, and that can help a lot. Number 2, and this became very clear to me, is that you really want to have a handle on the pacing of this chapter. Chapter 1 is foremost an exploration and the fun of going through the Witchlight Carnival, going on rides, trying out games, getting involved in contests, and kind of seeing interesting things, right? And the pacing of that, if you're too slow, things can, or if you turn the dial too much one way, things might get a little slow. It's like you go on one ride after another, you see interesting things, but like, what are you doing here? It's real easy to kind of lose track. Oh, why are we here, right? What are we doing here, right? But if you put it too hard in the other direction, they're going to skip that stuff, and they're not going to go on any rides, and they're not going to just have a good time. So you really have to, more so than I think in other adventures and in other sort of scenarios like this, you really need to be continually balancing and carefully balancing how the players are reacting to the carnival. Are things getting a little stale and things getting a little bored? Well, now it's time to drop in some of the clues that are showing them that there's more going on here, right? Are they getting too driven by like there are things happening here and there's conspiracy theories and everything? Well, then remind them that it's okay to go and do the custard eating contest, right? Or that maybe you should think about this while you're on one of those swans, right? Talking philosophy. So you want to continually have a careful gauge on that, right? You want to make sure, and sometimes you might need to step out of character and say, just to let you guys know, you are free to explore the carnival and enjoy it. You don't have to go chasing anything. There's no timer that's happening right now where, because you went on the swan ride, now you're hosed, right? Now the thief got away with whatever they got away with and you're not going to get it. You want to make sure, you can go ahead and tell them, right? There's a lot of times things that we have a lot of trouble with when we're running a game can be solved by us just breaking character and saying it, right? And that's an example of just tell them that things aren't so urgent that they don't have to immediately go down that path. On the same side, you don't want them just running around from, exploring every single thing. And there is I said that there's no timer. There can be a timer. You can sort of move those hours of the thing and say like, hey, the carnival is going to be ending and there's only so many rides. Make sure to triage which rides you're interested in. That's up to you. You can actually just change that timer and say that they can go on as many rides as they want. If everybody's having a good time, you could do that. But I have talked to other DMs, and this was my experience as well, that we covered like maybe half, maybe even less than half of the total number of things that you can do in the carnival. And I think that's fine. I think it was the opportunity for the players to kind of go after the things they were interested in and skip the things that they weren't really interested in, and still along the way get dropped in with these clues that are telling them what's going on. And then the last part is tied to that too, which is there's a lot of like little secret clues that are going on in this chapter. There's a lot of information that the characters could pick up. And the adventure has them set in different places. You can sort of through Kettle Steam, you can learn about certain things, or from Witch and Light, you can learn about certain things, or from Burley, you can learn some certain things. You can follow what we do in the Lazy DM's checklist, right? Which is separate those facts from the characters that might reveal them. It doesn't have to be the unicorns that say things, right? It doesn't have to be Kettle Steam. It can be lots of different characters. You can take these ideas, and this is where I think like doing your Lazy DM prep and having your 10 secrets and saying these are the potential secrets the characters might learn, and then drop them in, and maybe they can learn it from different people, right? They can learn it from the people that they're talking to. So you can separate out those clues, those important clues. And I wrote some of these clues down here because these are like the main things that the characters probably ought to know by the time they move from chapter 1 to chapter 2. And that's, how do you even get to Prismeer, right? And the idea is, well, there's a mirror inside the Hall of Illusions that lets the thieves, the Hourglass Coven thieves, enter and exit Prismeer, right? And you can use that mirror to get through as well. So that's like a piece of information, but there's a few different people who might know about that information. There's a few different ways that the characters might learn about it, and that's pretty good. The other one is learning about the Hourglass Coven, learning about the hags, learning about the deals that they made with Mr. Witch and Mr. Light and how that operates. And learning about the thieves that they've sent here and that the thieves have taken it. That's really good. One real trick, I'll talk about this when I talk about like how I ran this chapter, is like make sure the characters see the thieves and maybe recognize them. Like they haven't seen them in 8 years, or in my case, 16 years, right? And because they haven't seen them, suddenly when they see, and it's creepy, right? You can do this kind of fun, like little girl walking along and she's got her pig mask and she just turns and smiles, and you can see like her rotted teeth, and she's got this huge, and you're like, what the hell is that? And you're like, you've seen her before. Like you remember her before. And they're like, oh my God, that's important, right? And then you can kind of shift things. You can't quite find her. Like they lose track of her, right? So there's fun ways to kind of drop that in, but you can drop that in wherever you want. So learning about that stuff is really important. And then the final, another thing that they need to learn about is the origin of the Witchlight Carnival. The fact that Mr. Witch and Mr. Light had another carnival and they traded it, and they was only supposed to be for a year, but they really loved it. So they made a deal with the Hourglass Coven, and the Hourglass Coven was the group that said, that's fine, but one thing, anybody that comes in without a ticket, we get their stuff. We're going to take something from them, and that's between us and them. That has nothing to do with you, but we're going to use your carnival. And they're like, yeah, okay. So that's an important fact that they could learn. And the big one is the disappearance of Zybilna herself, right? And the fracturing of Prismeer. The fact that the Hourglass Coven have kind of fractured Prismeer into these 3 realms, hither, thither, and yon, right? And that is probably a piece of information. And the fact that Zybilna has disappeared completely. These are probably important pieces of information that's better if they learn about it before they end up in Prismeer. On the other hand, with stuff like this, if they got into Prismeer, you could certainly have any of the NPCs in Prismeer tell them the same thing. So that works. One other thing that I dropped in here that I wanted to make sure is that I wanted the characters, the players understood why so there's a whole thing that I've talked about. I talked about in the show that I did on this, and I'm going to talk about it a fair bit here, which is my concept of bringing in these things that I'm calling the dreadful incursions. Dreadful incursions are incursions of the domains of dread from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, like an area that essentially the domains of dread and Prismeer are colliding together because Zybilna hasn't been around, right? Because Zabilna's disappeared, she was keeping these two universes at bay, and now they're colliding together because she's gone. And that offers up, for me, the value of that is A, I get to use Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which is a really cool book and I love it. B, I can offer clear areas for the third pillar, for combat, right? I wanted players to enjoy some combat, and I want them to enjoy combat without feeling like they lost. I don't, while it's really cool that you can get through all of Wild Beyond the Witchlight without combat, to me, it felt like it could lead to the point where players want to engage in, mine anyway, like combat. They want to do it, but they also recognize that combat isn't really always the overall goal. So that means anytime they would get into combat, it's like they failed, right? And I don't want them to feel like, oh, well, we got into a fight with the Harengon gang, so now we lost, right? Or we shouldn't have done that. So instead, I'm like, no, I want you to have clear things that you can fight and you don't feel bad about it, right? And I've done 2 of these incursions so far in my game. We're going to talk about them. But that's another opportunity for something, for them to learn something, which is learning the origins of these incursions, to why, how do they happen? Why do they happen? How come the people that are not, how come people don't notice them when they occur, and like when they disappear, they all kind of like, their brains are fuzzy. Like, I don't remember, something happened. I don't remember what. I had that wired in, and that's probably another secret that I wanted to drop in. And in my game, I did. So those are kind of my big 3 tips, right? Make sure you run a solid session 0. Make sure you have a handle on the pacing and that you know how to turn the pacing of the game one way or the other. And make sure that you separate the clues of the things that are important for the characters to learn from the location where they learn them, so that you can drop them in wherever they learn them, wherever they might learn them during their exploration. Those are really my big ones. But I have some other tips too. These are things that I picked up, but also I got from other people that I talked to about this, which is make sure to give out the trinkets, right? And keep track of the trinkets. I didn't realize this, and I screwed up, and now I don't know what to do about it, because my characters are already in chapter 2 and they don't really have a lot of trinkets. But those trinkets are the currency of Prismeer. They're a way to buy things in Prismeer. They're a way to buy favors, and everything. The 3 rules of kind of life in the Fae mean that if you don't have things that you can give to them, that's a real problem. So I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but it would have been something that I should have thought about more when I was running it, because you could actually take those games where they could earn this stuff, and instead of having them all in one place that they might miss, like they did in my game, you could have them all throughout the area, right? Treat those as like every time they're walking from one place to another, there's a game of chance they can do, and they can win stuff at the game of chance. That would be something that I wish I had done. So this is something I did do, and I'm happy that it worked out this way, is staying flexible with the motivation for Mr. Witch and Mr. Light and their reaction to being confronted with the truth, right? And in the adventure kind of lays it out at a heist, that they're generally unhelpful until you steal, most likely, Mr. Witch's watch, right? Because Mr. Light's rod is really hard to get. And then you can kind of use it to sort of blackmail them a little bit and learn information. And that's certainly one way to go. I actually had it that when the characters just confronted them about it and told them everything that they had learned, Mr. Witch and Mr. Light realized the gig was up, and they broke down. And particularly when they found out what had been stolen from the characters, and they thought, like, I figured you're going to lose like your pinky toenail, right? Or you're going to lose like a small trinket of yours. I didn't realize like you're losing your family's memory of you in one case, right? And they realized, like, so I made them sympathetic, right? And I think that was kind of fun because it makes them likable. Like, I wanted both Witch and Light to be likable characters. And in mine, when they were confronted about, after the characters had gone through like a good session and a half, a good deal of it. I think they had one session 0, then they had an entire other session exploring the carnival. And then about halfway through the next session is when they finally confronted Mr. Witch and Mr. Light. And that worked out really well. Like, I think they did 2 full sessions in the carnival, and it was the end of the second session when they actually made their way or were real close to making their way across. And so that worked out. So you really put yourself in like the head of Mr. Witch and Mr. Light and recognize that they can go ahead, and you don't have to have the whole blackmail of the heist, right? Like, if that works, right? And that's an option, right? But there are other options too. There are other ways that Mr. Witch and Mr. Light can get involved. So that was something that happened in my game and actually worked out well. I talked about moving the contest so that they're around the whole park. That way the characters can engage in these contests, get prizes, and the prizes can be useful later. So that really worked. And we'll talk about dreadful incursions. I think I'll hold back on this a little bit. We'll move this down the list, right? and talk about Dreadful Incursions. So what did we do in my game? What was the path that we actually took? So they went to the ticket booth, and that worked out really well. One trick that I had for the ticket booth that I picked up from Reddit, which worked really well, is that there's a bunch of kids that don't have tickets and that want to go in. And the characters can take the tickets that Elowick gives them and give it to the kids instead. And then they can take the requests from the goblin. They can do the Fey packs with the goblin, which is a really cool thing. It's like written in the book, but you don't really do it, right? And you could just buy a ticket for like whatever, a little bit of silver, and every character has enough money that they could do this. But all my characters except one ended up taking the Fey bargain, and that added a whole other layer that was really kind of fun. So the idea that they give their tickets up to the kids, and then you have this other group of kids that are running around. And in my case, it was really fun because the kids were a bunch of rambunctious jerks. And it was a lot of fun to have this like alternative group of kids that they would continually run into. And sometimes they would save them, and sometimes they're competing. They competed with them in the snail race. They saved them in other ones. The kids, it was really fun. So that worked really well for the ticket booth. Then they went to the Lost and Found. That was kind of interesting. It was the first NPC, the Displacer Beast there was the first NPC that was being real hedgy about the lost things. It makes sense. So like, hey, I lost my stuff. Why don't I go to Lost and Found? And the Lost and Found's like, is this it? No. Is this it? No. Is this it? No. Is this it? Right? And jerking around. And then they realize, like, this guy's lying to us. Like, he knows something. He's lying to us, right? And that's like the first, like, something's not right here. That worked okay, right? And then with the kids running around in the Lost and Found, I replaced them with the kids that were outside with the tickets. So that was kind of fun because at one point they were like, can I just look in your Lost and Found and see if we can find our stuff in there? Because obviously you're not sure what we're doing. And it's like, I'm not going to let you look in here. There's like Vorpal swords and stuff in here. And you'll just say, hey, that's my Vorpal sword. And then you walk away with a Vorpal sword. And they're like, there's a Vorpal sword. And he's like, yeah, it's one right here. And then like a kid grabs it and runs. Like, oh man, there it goes. There goes the kid with the Vorpal sword. Right. And it was fun. It was kind of like fun stuff to do. They did their Dragonfly rides. It was the first time that I think is it Kettle Steam? Yeah, it's Kettle Steam. So Kettle Steam, that's the first time Kettle Steam got involved. And that was kind of neat because that is the first time that one of the kids that they had met outside was at risk, right? And that was, again, I was able to kind of use these children NPCs. I think I might bring them back. I think they might make their way into Prismeer themselves. I think there might be kind of fun opportunities for them to show up, right? As kind of troublemakers inside. I think that will be really. I did the custard eating contest. It was kind of gross. It was like the pie eating contest scene from Stand By Me, right? There was a lot of regurgitation, but it was kind of fun. And they the player, it was certainly memorable. The carousel was fun. The puzzle's a little goofy. I don't know, like, does everybody end up doing the puzzle every time? Like they go on the ride. It was, I probably didn't run it right, but it was a little strange to do the puzzle. They did it and they succeeded. It wasn't that hard. And then they had the gossiping, the gossiping unicorns. And that was fun. The idea that they're all actual unicorns just running around inside this thing was also a lot of fun. So it worked out, and it was a good way to start dumping secrets and clues, right? So it was at that point when they were wandering around where I had them see the first hourglass thief. In this case, it was Sowpig, right? And that one was cool. That was like a turning point. And I loved describing her. And I loved like the fear that she brought. And she's like this little ghoul girl, right? And like people are like, what the hell? And that immediately started. And that's when I jumped right into Dreadful. That was sort of when the first Dreadful Incursion. That was when the first Dreadful Incursion occurred. And again, we're going to talk all about Dreadful Incursions. So hang on to that. But that was where I first realized the impact that Dreadful Incursions were, the somewhat unintended impact that Dreadful Incursions were having on this game, which is they began to trust nothing. So instead of just saying like the Dreadful Incursion is this thing that happened here, they started to say this whole place is falling apart, right? Like they thought Mr. Witch and Mr. Light were behind it, right? And because nobody could see it and because everybody was ignoring it, they were like, you guys are, this is a bad place, right? And that was too much. And I had to kind of let them recognize, like the one who's trained in Arcana saw, no, that rift was different. He didn't cause that. Nobody here caused that. That was something else, right? And then they learned more about it from Elowick later. So that worked out really well. They went to the mystery mine. They went through it, and I dropped more kind of not Dreadful Incursions exactly, but more sites of the domains of dread in there as their way of going through it. That was kind of made things scary. And then this was kind of in the next session. They went and visited Mr. Witch and Mr. Light and confronted them. They sort of just barged their way in, right? In which they saw them. And they started bringing up all their evidence and all this stuff that they had, all the things that are going on. And then they said, these are the things we lost, right? And that was when I was like, I think Mr. Witch and Mr. Light are going to be sympathetic to that. And they're going to say, like, what have we done? Like, how many other people have lost things that really matter? Parts of them that are gone because of this deal we made, because we're selfish, because we just like our carnival. right? And so I had them kind of turn and they said, we don't even know if we're going to be able to keep it, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but we're with you and we'll help you. And then they, so then they said, but we're going to go to the big top and we're going to do it there. But, if you want to know the gate and I'm not sure if this is in the book, but the way I said, I think it makes a lot of sense. The gateway that the thieves use is inside the Hall of Illusion. So if you want, we don't have your stuff. Your stuff is held by the Hourglass Coven. They already learned about the Coven previously. The Hourglass Coven has your stuff, and you need to get to, they are inside Prismeer, and you have to go to Prismeer to get it. And the way to get to Prismeer is by going through this mirror. So now they had all the information they needed to go to chapter 2, right? Then luckily they said, this is really important. Hey, snails, let's go race the snails. And the snail race was really fun. It was a bit chaotic to manage. There was a lot of road rash style, because it was all of them, and then it was a bunch of the kids that are known as the FUs, the friendly urchins, or the FUs were the kids. And there was a lot of competition between them, and it was really fun. And the idea that the snails were super, super slow until they got on them, and then they went 100 feet a second. Everyone's like, wow, right? Everybody had to make dex checks to not go flying off their super fast snail. That was a really good time. I enjoyed that a lot. They did go and listen to the Silver Song. They heard the disruption, but that gave them the chance to confront Kettlesteam. And then Kettlesteam said, my patron is gone. And my wife's character also has the same patron. She's the cleric. She's a trickster cleric right? So she's like, mine too. And they hugged each other and she said, we're going there. We're going to solve this, right? And she built this bond with Kettlesteam right away. And that was kind of a neat thing, that this sort of pseudo villain immediately became somebody that they wanted to help. Then they had the crowning of the Witchlight Monarch. I kind of described it all. And the idea here is they had been doing enough good and bad stuff. And they've been doing a bunch of positive and negative things that they were bouncing around the middle of the happiness chart. So I was like, they shouldn't win, right? And I was like, and it would be a little cliche if one of the kids from the FUs won. So I was like, I'm just going to roll a random character, right? And it was really kind of funny that I picked this random NPC out of a random NPC generator who's like, yay! And no one knows who they are, right? Everyone in the comments was like, oh, okay. And they were like, yeah, running around and riding around in this place for me. It's like, woo, butterflies. It was kind of a fun moment. And then they went to the Hall of Illusions, and that's where I dropped in another dreadful incursion. In this case, I dropped in the Sea of Sorrow incursion. So when they went in there, they could hear the sound of the sea, and they could smell salt water. And they're like, what the hell is that? And then they're going, and they see the mirror, and they see one of the other, I think they saw the one that looks like one of the hags. It's not the Goblin Girl, and it's not the Shadow. They saw one of the other ones who was trying to trick the guy. They got the whole thing of the couple and her breaking down in laughter because of the Tasha's hideous laughter, and all of that was in there. And then he was there, and he's like, what the hell? And they turn, and in the other mirror, they see they're on the deck. The portal, the tear between worlds, is on the deck of the ship in the Sea of Sorrow with the pirate captain and the bodies that are hanging over the sides of the ship and her crew, which I made sea spawn. And I had a couple of the sea spawn make their way through the incursion and attack the characters. 6 characters, first level. The sea spawns were a little hard, but they focused their energy and they managed to kill them without too much difficulty. And the only thing I screwed up on is I didn't make it clear that she wasn't coming through, right? Because if she came through, she'd just butcher them. But it was really cool for them to see it. And because I used the Sea of Sorrow section from the guide, I was able to drop in some interesting details that they saw. So it wasn't just a crazy pirate ship. It was like they saw an island made out of fossilized bone with a lighthouse shining a green light that's not calling out to anybody in the sea, but calling to something below, right? And it was neat stuff that they saw. They're like, there's a whole crazy world over there. And then they killed the sea spawn and zip, and it snapped shut. And they're like, let's get the hell out of here. And they jumped into Prismeer. And that was the end of their chapter. So that worked out. It was good. I think we're having a lot of fun. Let's talk about the dreadful incursions. And they are serving their purpose, but they're also having another somewhat unintended effect, which isn't surprising. They're definitely bringing interesting moments for combat. And I've had one of the players who kind of randomly generates characters when he plays, who's playing a tiefling barbarian. And he's like, yeah, something to hit. Right. And he's excited. And he's like, everyone else is like, man, that was terrible. He's like, man, that was fun. We got to kill a bunch of rats. I enjoyed that. Right. And so they're enjoying the opportunity. But the unintended effect is that it is definitely taking the whimsical nature that I was so excited about when I saw this adventure, and it is darkening it, right? And I've talked to my wife about this, right? My wife has played chapter 1 now a couple of times. She's played Witchlight both for organized play and she's played it in our home game. So she knows the difference, right? And for her, there's definitely like, it is taking, I mean, not just for her, but I think for all of us, right? That it's taking this sort of darker, I mean, you're definitely like, if you have a light dark dial, right? And you have like dark on one side, which is Descent into Avernus and Rime of the Frost Maiden and Curse of Strahd, right? And then on the other side, you have Wild Beyond the Witchlight, right? And maybe like a little bit of Waterdeep Dragon Heist is probably more of a kind of a, that, when you put these dreadful incursions and you're turning that dial back to the dark, it's not super dark because they have an opportunity. There's so many other things. They had the Harengon, like in chapter 2 already, they've had the Harengon stuff and that worked really well. So there's, they are serving their intent, but they're definitely adding a level of darkness. So it is not, I'm still going with them, and we're gonna play with some dreadful incursions today because I'm not ready to let go of them. I think they're still important. I think that I've now made them part of the story, so they're there. But B, and they serve their purpose. But it is not the kind of thing that I just plain up recommend, right? I'm enjoying them. I think that it is an interesting thing to consider. But I think that each DM who wants to run this module, who wants to run this adventure, each DM who's running this adventure should consider whether they want to do this before they just jump in, because it's going to change the theme of the adventure, right? And maybe not in the direction that you want. So that's definitely probably my biggest observation when it comes to the dreadful incursions, is that there is this overall feeling of wonder and whimsy, and the feeling of wonder and whimsy shifts when you add these in. And I think it's another dial, and it's like, how much do you put into them, and how big are they, and what impact do they have on the rest of the adventure, right? I think that could be, that's a big question. Hey, Lord Kazumba is here. Welcome, Lord. So that's something worth considering. And we're going to talk about it today. Because again, I think I'm going to keep going with them myself. I like them, right? I'm enjoying them. And I know, I get it, right? Like I just spent like a year, or not a year, but pretty close to a year, right? Running Rime of the Frostmaiden and just like, oh God, this adventure. I don't think my problem with Rime of the Frostmaidens were really about how dark it was, but it is a dark adventure. I did have that problem when I ran Descent into Avernus, that like I had to change some of the themes of Descent into Avernus because, it was just like, I didn't like the direction the characters were going. Right. So but I'm enjoying the dreadful incursions myself. I like doing that. I'm enjoying mashing in these things. And I think it gives me, this is kind of the thing that excites me to bring in my part of this adventure. So I really do like this. Makes me wonder about what the possibilities of the reverse of these inclusions may bring about. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we all kind of know where this is headed, right? Like when this adventure is solved. And I think that's part of it. So I think it'll be okay, because I think there's still going to be a lot of beautiful things that they're going to see, a lot of whimsy. I'm really looking forward to some of the big pieces of chapter 1 that I was reading about, but I want more. So that's really my whole thought about how things have been going. So now we're actually going to go through some lazy DM prep and get set for running chapter 2. As I mentioned, my characters are already in chapter 2. They started off on the big causeway. They made their way down. They dealt with the Harengon bandits. One character gave something up to the Harengon bandits. They gave up a memory of theirs, but the rest of them sang a bunch of songs with them. And it went well. And the Harengon bandit said, yeah, you're cool. That was a good gift. Take care, right? And then the characters found a raft. It's a weird random encounter. And then they're making their way to the Leaning Tower because they saw the following thing. Thunderbase says, are you enjoying running it? Yes, very much. I am very much enjoying running it. I'm stressed out because I'm running 2 totally different campaigns in 2 totally different systems and in 2 totally different worlds. And it's a lot of work. I really like this adventure a lot. I still really like this adventure. I have yet to find anything where I'm discovering things about it. And that's the stuff I'm kind of trying to share. But I haven't found anything where I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do with this? Like unlike chapter 1 of Rime of the Frostmaiden, I got lost in chapter 1 of the Rime of the Frostmaiden. I didn't know how to make my way out of it, right? I was stuck there for months. And this one, it's like, I got through it in 3 sessions. One of the discoveries I have is like, this is a short adventure, I think. I think we're going to get through this pretty quick, right? And chapter 2 is fast. Like chapter 2 is not, that's something that I kind of notice is like chapter 2 is a quick chapter. When we think about the beats of the chapter, we think about the things that are going on in this chapter. There's not a lot, right? There's when you look at the locations of hither, there's the Slanty Tower, right? Which has its kind of own fun. Where is it here? There's Telemy Hill, right? Which is where they kind of, their whole purpose, I think, is to go get a key. Oh, the tollway, right? The Brigand's Tollway is the third. So there's like these 3 locations. There's only like 3 locations. That's not a big place, right? There's not a lot of stuff. So I think I'm going to add a 4th. I think my plan is I want to add a 4th, and that's because I'm going to add a bigger, dread. I've been kind of curious, like, are dreadful incursions a good idea? I don't know. Let me make a big one. Right. So I'm planning, and one of the things we're going to do tonight is we're going to make a big dreadful incursion. One that's not just a rift opens up and 2 monsters come out, but one that has been opening up and it's bigger and more things have been bleeding over and more stuff has been coming over. Right. That's going to be. Yeah. And then the other location is Downfall, which is kind of the end of this thing. One thing that I'm definitely going to do, I was interested to find out when leveling occurs in this. And one of the milestones that exist in the book, I think, are a little off from what I want. So you obviously go from level 1 to level 2 the minute you travel into Prismeer, right? And that makes sense. And then the next level is after you survive an encounter with Bavlona, right? The first of the Hourglass Coven. Well, survival could mean defeat or overcoming her, right? And then you get another level when you go from hither to thither. And that might be a really short amount of time, right? Depending on how things go with Bavlona, you might, from the minute you meet Bavlona and quote unquote survive the encounter, might be a long time before you go to thither. But I'm not sure. It seems like it could be short. So I'm going to move that milestone forward and say the minute you reach Downfall is the minute you get to 3rd level. And then 3rd level is Downfall through thither. And then once you reach thither, you'll get to 4th level, which I think is how it's supposed to be, right? You get 3rd level when you beat Bavlona, when you survive Bavlona. Some people think you get it the minute you see her, but I don't think that's how it is written. I think it's actually written that, once you survive the encounter. So to me, it's going to be like discovering Downfall, like reaching Downfall is going to be a benchmark, right? And that way they have, and I'm going to say it to them. I'm going to give them a Matt Colville style card virtual that says quest, reach Downfall, reward, achieve 3rd level. And that I'm going to give that card virtually, to the players. So when we think of the big beats of this adventure, we know we have I just mentioned the 3, right? The Brigand's Tollway. That's one. That's actually the 3rd, right? We have the tower, the slanty tower, and we have Telemy Hill, right? And then the Brigand's Tollway, and then Downfall. I'm going to add in probably after, somewhere around here, maybe after Telemy Hill, the Dreadful Incursion. And we're going to decide which one we think that might be. Then the other thing that I'm going to do is there's all of these encounters along the way, right? There's a list of encounters along the way. The Abandoned Raft, the Gushing Oh Well, the Inn at the End of the Road, Marsh Gas, Mud Mephits, Stiltwalkers, Stream of Visions, and the Waterlogged Battlefield. That battlefield, by the way, a couple of these, both the Gushing Well and the Waterlogged Battlefield, make for good incursion-y territory, right? That Waterlogged Battlefield could be really interesting. You might not even make it an incursion, right? I thought about this. I thought about a fun encounter for that waterlogged battlefield would be if they run into one of the members of who are the agents of chaos, the League of Malevolence, right? Is that right? That having one of the members of the League of Malevolence like watch them, like they've been watched, and then kind of wave a hand and having an undead Fomorian show up, right? A huge, like this giant, undead, and I don't know, maybe a Fomorian, undead Fomorian is a really bad idea, but it might be really fun. And I have 6 characters, so they can probably do it, and they'll be like, I guess they'll be 2nd level. Oh, come on. Is there a Fomorian in? There might not be one. We could take a Cyclops. Cyclops are pretty nasty, right? They hit pretty hard. So you could take like the Cyclops and call it a Fomorian, right? And but boy, does it hit hard. Like each hit knocks out like one dude. So you might knock this down to like 1 attack instead of 2, but have it really be nasty. And that might be kind of a fun battle, clear fight, like, an undead Fomorian you don't have to think about talking your way through. It might be a neat way to bring the League of Malevolence in. So I'm I might do something like, I think the inn is a really good upward beat. The idea that if they've been having a hard time, if things have been kind of grim, the idea that they see a big inn that just sort of walks their way and they go in and they enjoy it. And they'll be very skeptical. So I'll have to make it clear to them, like, no, this is a nice place and you can have a nice rest here and you can have, do all the other things. I think that will work well. I think there's a lot of interesting encounters. The stilt walkers, the mud methods, I think are really going to be hard or really unlikely that you're going to be able to get through that without fighting them. Cause I think you have to it's weird. But the key is that I'm basically going to take one of these encounters. I don't even know which one. And every time they're going from one major place to another major place, I'm probably going to drop that encounter in there. They definitely want to see, when they saw the map, they definitely said that they wanted to see what the serpent, the antelope serpent thing, right? The moose, this dude, right? They really want to know what the hell that thing is. So they're going to probably go up that way just to see what that is. So I'm definitely going to want to do some fun stuff there. So that's all good stuff. So let's start prepping. Let's do some prep here. We will go back to my Wild Beyond the Witchlight Notion notebook. By the way, I'm using Notion to do my campaign planning. So if you're like, hey, what tool is that? The answer is Notion. And anybody that's in Twitch chat, you can let anyone else know about Notion or how to use it by typing ! Notion with no spaces. And it gives a link to how I use Notion for my campaign planning, including a campaign template for using Notion, which if you're watching this video later, you can find in the show notes below. All right, let's generate a session. So one of the tricks that I've recently been doing is I've been putting a database table right in here that has the characters and their info in the notes. So I don't have to go to a second page. I don't know why I didn't do this before. So I don't have to go to a second page to look at who the characters are. So we have 6 characters currently. We have Ori. Ori is a fairy, a sorcerer. Do I have that right? I'm pretty sure it's a sorcerer. Wizard, fairy wizard. Oh, that's right. And took the subclass. That's the one where the book is an animated book. So that's pretty cool. Ori is the big arcana person. That's what she looks like. She lost her family and she lost where her home is. That's what she's trying to get back. And it is held by Scabbeth and Nightshade. Bella Sassypants, played by my wife, is a tabaxi. I think we have 2 tabaxis in here. And Bella is a druid, but is a tabaxi cleric. That's right. Yeah, the cleric of Zybilna. Right. Intimidating Cake is our other tabaxi. He is a bard. Lost his cousin at the carnival. Went there with his cousin. The cousin didn't come back. Kolshek is our tiefling barbarian. Lost a token of his homeland. All right, and wants to get that back. And Moongrave has it. Tarch, the legendess. Tarch is a satyr who lost his decorum, lost his sense of decorum. He used to be like a really fun, the central energy in all of the parties he would go to, and now he's just kind of become an obnoxious git. And no one, and he realized that I'm not as funny as I used to be. Timing is off. And then Timothy Sprout. Timothy is a Harengon Ranger. Tarch is a rogue. And Timothy is a Harengon Ranger whose family lost all memories of him. And that he's trying to find it, he's trying to go back and find it. So those are the characters that we have in today's game. Strong start. So what is so potentially the vision of the larger incursion might be one strong start. We'll see when we generate an incursion, we can see what that is. It's not going to be right here though. I just want them to see it in the distance, sort of like when Gandalf and Pippin are looking out and they see the big beam of green light that's going. I want something like that. What the hell? Oh man, something's happening over there. Well, that's not but I don't want to steer them away from the direction that they've already been going. They have a raft. I think they are. So I could start in media res and just have them go they're at the slanty tower, right? And I don't really need a too crazy a strong start because I can just jump right to the flavor text. And right there, you've got interesting thing, right? The basket that's dangling, the plea for help, Sir Talavar is there kind of pleading for help and has information. A lot of good things that can come from this, right? And I think that might just be a good way to go anyway. They just jump straight into the whole thing with Sir Talavar. It's a really fun and funny event. He's a neat character. Sir Talavar is a really kind of fun. Look at his picture. It's just awesome. Really good. Look at these. We've got, hey, you know what I love? I love when 4 of your 10 secrets and clues can be pasted in from D&D Beyond. right? Oh, I love when that happens. Saving me time. Except I can't get to the to-do list. There we go. Right? Saving me time. I love it. So let's see. We can close these, close that. So I really like the beginning of this, and I think it might just be a good way. Oh, and there are 2 giant constrictor snakes, and they are nasty, right? So you could do like a speak with animals, or you might have to fight them. Or maybe there's some other way. They are tough. Look at these guys. CR2. Whew. They don't do a ton. This is pretty nasty. They can grapple and restrain. They could wipe some people out. So this could be a tricky situation to deal with. Is it TPK material? Probably not for 6 second-level characters, but it could be a little scary. But the idea is that the only way you can really get around these snakes, they are sleeping, so maybe there's ways to sneak around them. That's probably the big way, is if you manage to get Sir Talavar out of the. And I think that like this is another one where you can say how they can come by. You can create a quest card, right? Like rescue Sir Talavar, receive Sir Talavar's sword, right? Which is actually a dagger. And I think like a +1 dagger is kind of boring, but maybe the dagger's name is Valor, right? Like, won't this be fun? Let's put this, just jump right this. I think the idea that its name is Valor, and what can it do? Like, what would be a fun spell effect that the dagger might be able to do once a day? I mean, an easy one would be that you can cast, what's the cleric armor spell? Shield of Faith, right? That you might be able to cast Shield of Faith on it. Or I guess you could do magic weapon, but it is a magic weapon, so that's not really beneficial. Is there an offensive, like what if it both was like a sword and shield, right? And this one sword could do like a sword and shield thing. It could do Shield of Faith. Maybe it upgrades, right? Maybe once they reach, once they've gone through a significant element of valor, once they complete a quest of valor, they also get some other ability. What is another cool cleric spell that's like a real, like something that a knight would have, right? Like a knightly spell. Well, let's take a look. Let's just go through some cleric spells here. It's my dirty trick for magic items. I love to give magic items a spell effect. I know it's like a dirty treat. Beacon of Hope, that's not a bad one. Let's see, spells, cleric spells. And we're not going to go too high level, right? So these are all in order. Bless is always good. And keep in mind, we have a cleric in the group, so you don't want to necessarily give the best spells. Shield of Faith is a good one, though, because it's like a bonus action. You can do it. People really love that. And I wouldn't mind dropping like a third level spell. I mean, Spirit Weapon is pretty great, right? And for another character to be able to cast Spirit Weapon 1 time per day, I mean, that's a meaty ability, and it kind of fits, right? It's like, maybe like a spiritual form of Sir Talavar is going around slashing with his dagger. And the idea is they can do each of these like once a day, right? The cool bit is both of those are bonus actions. So anybody who's wielding this dagger gets these, they can drop those without losing a significant part of their action economy. Warding Bond. Yeah. I think I'm pretty good with that, right? And I might hang on to the Spirit Weapon part until like maybe they'll discover that, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to tell them that right away. We'll see. But that's a good, it's a good piece of a good artifact there. I probably will also drop in a relic. I should create some relics that fit the theme of Prismeer. That's probably a random table that I should do. But for the meantime, I think we're going to do this glowing gnomish string of beads that casts Identify. That's not bad, right? And I think because I didn't give them a lot of trinkets, I think that this is a good opportunity. Decorated otherworldly coin that casts Goodberry. We're going to make this a goblinoid coin that casts Goodberry, right? Like the goblin druids use that one. Any others that look like they work here? You can always hit. Ancient elemental skull that casts Sanctuary. I don't like the elemental skull part. That's kind of nasty. But Sanctuaries are pretty good. I don't know. One spell that would be a good one that they're not going to get is a Leomund's Tiny Hut. That they get like a one-use Leomund's Tiny Hut might be a pretty cool thing. An ancient dwarven candle that casts the dwarven. Sure, why not? Why can't it be? Why can't it be dwarves? So I think we'll drop in an ancient dwarven candle that casts Lehman's tiny hut. And we can always roll more. There's also, I think, a whole bunch of trinkets in the book, and we can certainly roll more on the Feywild trinkets is probably a good thing. So why don't we save ourselves a little bit of time and roll some trinkets? I can't see my own box. 45. A bar of soap that smells like something memorable from your childhood. Okay, cool. These trinkets are good. Drop in a handful of these that they find. 70 and 97. 70. Flask of spectral glowworms that change color to reflect the mood of the holder. And the other one was 97. Glass slipper missing its mate. All right. So those are, fun. These are useful because they're the kinds of things that they can trade with others. So because they didn't have a lot of opportunity to pick up these trinkets when they were in the festival, I think they're going to find more of these things. Great things to just like while they're doing their exploration, they're able to find. I think that will work. I think that will work really well. Yeah. So I think for a strong start, we're just going to start at the slanting tower, right? I don't think I need to do much more than that. Scene wise, we'll grab that list that I had just written up about the major beats of chapter 2, right? And we'll just jam those right in there because those are really the scenes. But I'm going to add the dreadful incursion. And that will help us, I think, with some secrets and clues. Fantastic locations, they're in the book. So I mean, maybe I'll keep this section around because we might come up with some interesting, oops, I'm in the wrong chapter. We might come up with some interesting locations for the dreadful incursion when we think about it. But right now, so we'll do that next. But right now, let's get, I wanted to get some NPCs, right? And there's a couple, Sir Talavar and Jingle Jangle. This one does a great job of, when I talk about the value of a published adventure, the more it just fills things out for me, like interesting NPCs or cool locations or secrets and clues, whenever I get that kind of thing. But you're just helping me out, right? Like that's work I don't have to do. So I really like it. Deadly Encounter Monster Benchmark. They are level 2. There are 6 of them. So that is 12. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So the sort of deadly benchmark is 3. That's why when I look at 2 giant constrictor snakes and I see that they're each CR2, I go, that's above deadly, according to my own little math here. So I'm a little worried about dropping a pair of constrictor snakes, but we'll see. All right, let's build an incursion. I put together I have a dreadful incursion page here, right? Oh, it looks like I created a fun little generator for these. This is pretty cool. But I think I made one. Maybe this is it. I have 2 dreadful incursion pages. So here are the cool domains. I went through all of the domains of dread. I think I did this last time around this show. I went through all the domains of dread, and I wanted to see like which ones I thought really would work well as incursion territory. So, that's a good question. Yeah, Scipio says we probably want to do something more with the inside of the tower. Is the inside of the tower not filled in? Is there nothing in the adventure? I didn't even really look. I don't recall there being very much in there. But yeah, that is certainly something to fill. But I can probably whip that up. Wow, there isn't. It's just a tower and then just a thing going on the outside. So what would be in the tower? Yeah, you could probably fill that out. You could put a dungeon in there if you want. You could have something really cool. But let's build this domain, and then that's a good question, and we'll get back to that. Let's pick a domain. Let's roll. Let's roll and see what we get. Oh, this dice. My dice tray. 4. Falkovnia. So I already had Falkovnia. It is a domain of dread that they are interested in. I think I'm going to hang on to that one. I want to do a different domain. So I'm not going to do Falkovnia. I'm not going to do the Sea of Sorrows because they've already done that. I want a new domain. But I think Falkovnia, I did some flash fiction about Falkovnia, and that went over well. So I'm going to have Falkovnia involved again because I think the woman that runs Falkovnia, the Dreadlord of Falkovnia, knows that there are portals and is thinking there's a way for her to escape. So that may be kind of cool, but I don't think we're ready for that. I rolled Falkovnia again. The gods really want me to do Falkovnia. 1. Barovia. The problem is everybody knows Barovia. So I'm rolling again. And I roll Barovia again. 6. Hazlan. All right, let's talk about Hazlan. Domain doomed by magic. So this is the one where the domain lord went free, right? I think. No, Hazlic rules Hazlan. Okay, so this is cool. All right. Warped by magical experiments. So already, there's purple worms. Magic of authority, justification for any excess in those without a specter of inevitable doom. Domain is less a nation than a vast magical laboratory. As Wizards Overlord, Hazlic views every being as either an apprentice or a test subject. He conscripts those he acknowledges as lesser wizards. So what if, again, I was thinking about what if this is an opportunity to bring in one or more of the members of the League of Malevolence might see this. So we're going to go to our notes, and we're going to go to location, and we're going to create a Hazlan incursion. So we're going to make a big one, right? So some of the features, we're going to basically say there's a piece of Hither, right? If we look at the map of Hither, some part of this area is going to be taken over by, maybe it's sort of like over here on the eastern side, right? I don't know what that little hut area is, but maybe it's on that eastern side of the mountains. That's where the Hazlan incursion, and maybe like the desert is pouring out. So there's a desert pouring out. What other? Let's read some more. Experiments, noteworthy features, apprentice. Let's see. Eye-shaped symbols marking structures, decorations, clothing. So a monument, right? It's Hazlic? Yeah, Hazlic. Monument showing an eye through which Hazlic sees, right? I think that's cool. Visible effects of magical disasters. Poisoned rivers from alchemical runoffs to craters caused by magical explosions, right? That's cool. Settlements and sites. Let's take a look at this. Things that they might see on the other end. Smog choking the village of Ramolai. Nearby mines, rare elements. So like a dying village. Dying village overtaken with the smoke of arcane mines. They can see that out there. Slyvar. Collection of laboratories. Discordant towers defying physical law by floating. The floating discordant towers. I imagine they look like, weird, what are those called? Like 8-sided, but long and thin, like shards, right? That's cool. Stuff is great, right? I don't see anything that grabs me. So we have a fog. What's it? The vapors of the mists. Spreading fog. Oh, look at this. Disaster sites. The Brew, a toxic marsh poisoned by alchemical pollution from Ramuli and unpopulated by sapient fungi. Ah, sapient fungi. We might have the things that... Are the characters tough enough to beat a shambling mound? That might be a monster. The fleshless forest. Stone trees. Cool. I got a lot of stuff here. We're going to have to knock this back. But this is all good. Moonstone Valley. Meteors, otherworldly creatures crash in this wasteland during every new moon. Maybe they see the meteors, right? Otherworldly meteors are cool. The Obiclast, famous floating rock formation, bears an uncanny resemblance to tools used to perform lobotomies. What does that even look like? I don't know what that is. Former lakes reduced to quicksand-riddled purple worm feeding grounds. I think the bones of a dead purple worm. Looks like an ice pick, yeah. So those are cool. And what kind of monsters? So, an easy one is a shambling mound, right? What's CR as a shambling mound? 5. Oh! If I recall, the shambling mound that was at it's only 1. It makes 2 slam attacks, 13 damage each. You can always take a monster like this and just drop it to 1 attack, and then it works. And the fact that it's immune, it resists cold and fire and immune to lightning. In fact, doesn't it it absorbs lightning. A shambling mound would be a good creature, but that's really hard. I don't know. I might stick it in here. It is a bag of hit points, but it's a bag of hit points that hits like a freight train too. You could have apprentice wizards of Hazlitt. Right, we've got some, I think the apprentice, they don't look like that. Right, but they can cast some real basic spells. They're only CR quarter. I need lower level wizards. Something between an apprentice and something else. I can always hand wave them. Could have cult fanatics. My favorite. Cult fanatic is a good stat block to use for a lot of different things. All the stats are fine. You can always swap out the spells, turn them into anything. Good old cult fanatics. I might, like as a dare, put in the shambling. Oh, I already did. Right. There's also the what are they? The living trees? Is that what they are? Shrubs, animated shrubs. What are they? I forget what they're called. There's another plant-like thing that we might be able to use instead. You could always have swarms of worms, right? Like grubs. And are they called blights? Twig blights. Yeah. Yeah, so we could have some twig blights. We could have a lot of twig blights. Those aren't so bad. What else did they said something else fungus, right? What are some, the monster manual has a section on those. What are some of the fungi? So they have shriekers, myconids. Yeah, adult myconids would be good. I'll do those. Also needle blights and vine blights. Yeah, those are good ones too. But I think the myconids are where I want to go. I think those are pretty cool. Hey, look, they have tags. So I think those are good. So one thing I want to do in this place, right? The rift is open. I guess that like one of the things, maybe it's a secret and clue, a wizard apprentice of Hazlitt has rose a floating obelisk in Prismare that's keeping the rift open. It must be destroyed to close the rift. Right? So I think that can work, right? That now we've taken what would be just a small rift, but the idea is that a wizard who made his way through the rift and saw it brought over and stuck this obelisk, and it sort of has created this. It's kept the portal open, and he's beginning to think like this is a way for us to expand beyond Haslin, right? Do we want any? I mean, this is a good opportunity to bring secrets of Haslin. Oh, let's see. I had a link, right? We can throw this right in as a secret so they can learn about Haslan. Yeah, rift anchors, right? I think the idea of rift anchors is really cool. So I kind of dig that. I don't know that I'm using this right away, right? I'm prepping it now. I should probably worry about like the next session, right? Follow my own advice. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of build out this idea of Haslan, and I like what I've got here. You know, I like this stuff. In fact, what I really ought to do is we're going to make a new page in Witchlight database. Where's my Witchlight database? Is it not called that? Grr. Yeah, it's called Witchlight database. Well, whatever. We'll make a new one in here. The Haslan Incursion, right? And create a location. I should find some cool art for it, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to grab this stuff, and I'm going to throw it right into my incursion here. All right. Cool. Copy that link. Let's see, open this as a page. Copy that. Stick it in here. Link that. And I can drop all this. Because I don't think I'm going to be using it tomorrow. Right? My game is tomorrow. So that's pretty good. But yes, Scipio brought up the really good point of what the hell is in the tower, right? So let's go back and, to the adventure that we're running. Let's see, I got my quick links here. And let's look at the tower. What does it say about the tower? This is hither, locations in hither, slanty tower. 50 feet tall, 20 foot diameter, open door at the bottom. Interior of the tower is empty except for a flight of stairs that spirals up inside the tower wall to an opening in the ceiling that leads to a crenellated roof. So there's nothing in there. We could put a monument in there, right? Like we don't have to fill it with like a great big dungeon. But we could drop a monument in there. Glowing astral standing stone, metallic dwarven obelisk, aberrant stone. These are all randomly generated from the Lazy DM's workbook. Glowing shadowy carved rock. That might be kind of neat. Maybe it's an unseelie rock. We could have some shadows there. That could be a fun thing to fight. That wouldn't normally be in there. Shadows are nasty. CR 1/2, and what we said, we can go up to 3, so that could be 6 shadows. That sounds about right. Shadows are nasty, though. We're going to grab these guys, and we're going to stick them in my Haslan. That's cool. So we'll move our shadows up here. Bang, because I think they're going to probably face the shadows. And I'll probably yank these out, because I don't think, like I said, I don't think we're going to see those in this next one. A vase full of shadows. That sounds pretty cool. What other secrets do we need? I mean, we've got those 4. That covers a lot of it. Is there anything else that they might discover when they're doing the tower? So one thing I discovered is that like I've got so let's look at the other one and see what clues our other friend has. One thing I noticed is like they can get through a lot of material pretty quickly. Like I actually ran out of stuff to run. If asked about Jingle Jangle, the Awakened Tree share the following information. So they might talk to some. But what does Jingle Jangle know? That's what I like. So we have Jingle Jangle's Tale of Woe. Here we go. Here's the useful information. Yep. This is all good stuff. So this is all tying to the 3rd. Yeah, and this last one here is really important. So these are all good. So easy to come up with these secrets and clues when they're in the book, when they're published in the book. Thank you. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast. Thank you, Will Doyle and Stacy, for putting secrets directly in there. Calicverse says, well, why do you think they got through things so quickly? Oh, another fantastic location. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because we don't fight a lot of stuff and combat takes time. That was a big one, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they just, it seemed like, I didn't expect how far they would get into Prismeer and into Hither. And so it was a good stopping point. So I kind of stopped it about a half hour early, which is fine. I don't think anybody minded. I mean, we're online, so it's not like people are driving home. So the other fantastic, the battlefield, right? I think that's cool. The Elven and Fomorian battlefield is a cool location that I want to drop in there. What else? What else do we need? I don't know. So like, how do I feel? Do I feel ready? I think so. I think I've got a lot of interesting stuff going on here. I got a lot of opportunities. A lot of opportunities for interesting things. So like of the random encounters, oh look, Feywild treats. That'd be a fun thing for our ranger to figure out. Have him find out. How old is the battlefield? That's a good question. Does it say? I don't think it says. If not, I'll just go with the thousands of years. The waterlogged battlefield. That's right out of a character's coming to a bog, site of a battle between elves and Fomorians long ago. Littered with rust and broken weapons. Characters enter there 2 suits of animated armor, each suit of animated armor. The animated armor is kind of a boring thing. I mean, it's kind of interesting that they do that, but like, I don't know. Which one of the League of Malevolence do I want to? 38. That'd be kind of fun. I've adjusted the water level. That can make travel interesting and use for the raft. Yeah, good point. Like maybe the water level rises, right? How does maybe that's a good strong start. Thank you. Scipio, you should come run this game. The water level rises. A sudden need for the raft. Very cool. I was looking something up. Now I forget what. Oh, League of Malevolence. Which one of the League members might they run into? Kellic seems the obvious choice. He's a chaotic evil human sorcerer. But there's a cleric, Skyla, right? And she's a warlock? Do any of them, Warduke, of course, and Zarak? Which one of these would be most likely? She's not a cleric. She's a warlock. She does look very cool. She might be a fun one. And maybe she uses a scroll, right? He's a sorcerer. He's all blasty. I think we'll put Skyla. Does she have a way to get away? She has invisibility and fly. That's a good question. Who is her patron? Well, looking at her spells and stuff, does it say? Goes Charme, Forge a Warlock's Pact with Baba Yaga. So she's a Warlock of Baba Yaga. I think doesn't she show up later as a spy kind of thing? She has a good gig in Yon during the adventure. So would she be the one most likely to be kind of examining this? I don't know. Maybe it isn't a great time to bring she quit the League. So would she be the one that's, would she be interested in learning what's going on with the dreadful incursions and all of that? Maybe. And she would basically run when she sees the character. She's not going to get involved with the characters. So Skyla is maybe at either the incursion area, probably the incursion area, or she might be in the battlefield. And I think she changes her look, right? So like, I think doesn't she have a way she has disguise self, which is a good way for her to have multiple, different ways to deal with that. So I think that would be okay. You said the Lorling is a spy. Yeah. I think it's kind of cool. Like, who can see the incursions, right? Who can study them? And I like the idea, like the League of Malevolence is sort of a cross-planar group themselves. So we can put that in a scene, right? Because not everybody can see it. So I think that's pretty interesting. So where would things go tomorrow? Well, so they're going to go to the Slanty Tower. They're going to learn about what's going on there. Maybe they go inside and they have to deal with the shadows. That would be kind of a fun thing to do. Shadows are scary. Then they travel to Telemy Hill. In between the Slanty Tower and Telemy Hill, they might run into it. They probably don't need I have so much crap open. There we go. They probably don't need the inn. So a gushing well might be interesting, and maybe stuff is coming out of that. Marsh gas, the stilt walkers would be kind of cool, right? So I think like marsh gas and stilt walkers might be a fun thing to see. Then they go to Telemy Hill. And then they go back to the Slanty Tower. They let him go, and then they probably go off, and they can kind of explore. The one other thing I need to figure out is the serpent antelope. The serpent, what it is, I forget what my friends referred to it as, but I'll have to come up with a cool NPC for that. Let's whip up an NPC real quick. Orwin, the horned serpent thing. What does it know? Probably, remembers the better times before Zybilna disappeared. I'll just roleplay that. We'll see how it goes. I don't know what other benefits he might offer. We'll see. That's if they go that far. And I guess I'll play it by ear. If they go from Telemy Hill if they're going to the Brigand's Tollway, that's probably when we'll drop in the dreadful incursion, or I'll probably, I think I can kind of move that anywhere, right? And you can always have it that like they go like surrounding in the mist, and then they sort of see this area. So that's something I can sort of drop in anywhere. And then of course the hut, the inn, the movable inn is a good thing for them to run into. Is there what are some of the other ones we have there? The mud methods or something I can drop in. Yeah. So I think, what's Stream of Visions? Let's learn about that. When the water is low, the character has a chance of about a 10-foot wide stream. Unknown to them, the stream flows from downfall, and any character who looks into it catches a glimpse of events transpiring in downfall at that very moment. They might see something different. This is cool. So the Stream of Visions is a good thing. So all these are pretty cool, right? I kind of dig them. But I'll kind of play it by ear, right? I'll run it, and I know that I can hit these things, and I know that I can drop them in when it feels like a good time to drop them in. But I think I'm pretty set. Like I've got a fair bit of material here to run for my next session tomorrow night. So I think I'm all set. So that I think that gives a decent view of like how I'm going to be looking. I haven't talked about Downfall at all, but Downfall is going to be a little bit. So maybe I'll do another show to talk about Downfall. Probably I will do another show talking about what it was like to run chapter 2 and then getting ready for my chapter 3 notes. So I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me this evening. It's always a great pleasure to hang out with fine folks while I'm preparing for my game. And I want to, so if you enjoyed this show, if you like what you have seen, you can help me out by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, supporting me directly on Patreon, picking up any of my books, or subscribing to my videos on YouTube. Hope you found this video useful, and have a great evening. Have a great week. And in the meantime, get out there and play some D&D. Take care, everybody.